was the impact of vaccination? According to models, vaccine saved 20 million lives. Then, as I said, we plotted the real world data. We plotted 1 year before the vaccination, mass vaccination rollout, 1 year after the vaccination rollout. Country after country, we saw some very paradoxical. And this, I will tell all of you to plot yourself. The data is still there. And before with that, there was also a paper published in the European Journal of Epidemiology where they found from 68 countries and 2947 American counties, they did not find any correlation between the level of vaccination coverage and deaths from COVID. So a paper had also come, so which gave us more confidence that probably what we are seeing is something unusual is happening. If you see, we start with Japan. This is the Japan. If you see Japan, the semicircle, red semicircle is the vaccine rollout in April 2021. This is the number of cases on the left side, and the right side is after vaccination rollout. If you see on the left side, there were hardly any cases. In fact, Japan did not even have a lockdown. So there were hardly any cases in Japan, but after the vaccine rollout, the cases also increased. What may be the reason, which requires more research for future strategy? It may be mutants came, it may be vaccination, it may be loss of efficacy over a few months. Then the other thing was that it reduces deaths from COVID. Unfortunately, this was again a very humbling experience to see that if you see the deaths on the left side, there was one peak after vaccine rollout, there are multiple peaks and the number of deaths increased after some time. So this is again from Japan and many countries. I have just shown some countries. This is the cases in Israel. Israel was complimented. Israel was applauded for having the fastest vaccination rollout. After vaccination, you see the number of cases. It has second booster, third booster, and the cases still kept increasing. Similarly, the deaths in Israel. So if you see, even a class 7 child will know that after the vaccine, before the vaccine, it is not working, at least at the population level. It may be individual level, you may consider. Individual level, it may help because many things work at the individual level by proper to the patient, customizing an intervention patient, but at the population level, particularly amount of cost, amount of logistics, and if it doesn't work, this is Australia. Australia is a very good example because Australia was very strict. Australia was very strict and it could control its COVID by restrictive measures, by lockdown, not letting anyone enter there. Australia without vaccine. Even that tennis player, Jovic, what was his name? Nojovic, that Australian, though he had recovered, he was not allowed to enter. After the vaccine, they had all the cases after the vaccine. If you see, this is in the public domain, anybody can check. Similarly, deaths, it's a matter of concern. This is deaths in Australia after the vaccine, right side. You see, they say most of the things are due to long COVID, but they never had any COVID. So whatever is happening, one has to raise a red signal, at least an orange signal key. Why they are having so many deaths? This is Singapore. Again, Singapore was the one country which controlled very well, but you see after the vaccination. This is Singapore, deaths, all the deaths after vaccine. This is Malaysia. I saw one of my teachers, Kevin Fernandez, Air Commodore Kevin Fernandez was in the audience. So he is attending this and he is in Malaysia at present. So this is the situation in Malaysia. After the vaccination, cases peaked. These are the deaths in Malaysia, most of the deaths after vaccination. Rollout. This is South Korea. Same deaths. This is Taiwan. Just see. Taiwan was also praised like Kerala. They control it very well. All the deaths after vaccination, few months. Cases. These are the deaths. Again, all the deaths after vaccination. This is Sri Lanka. Sri Lanka was doing again very well. But after vaccination, they had more cases. They had all the deaths after vaccination. So this is Nigeria. I have taken African countries but did not have much of vaccination. This is the 30% coverage. So it has got some peak which usually settles in developing countries. What happens that even without vaccine, with vaccine, you see in a pandemic, rolling out vaccine doesn't work because to take the vaccine effect, it takes 2 weeks, 3 weeks, then second dose. Whereas the respiratory viruses incubation period is 3 to 5 days. So by the time the vaccine is rolled out, the infection, particularly in crowded countries like India, Africa, Asia, it spreads very fast. So vaccine, by the time you give vaccine, the person has already developed natural immunity. Whereas in the Western countries, which we saw those, they are vulnerable, they are naive. This is Delhi, that's Nigeria. So what are the lessons from the data? Accordingly, we plan future strategy. Overweight appears to be a big risk factor than age suggested by outlier like Brazil and Japan. Despite different strategies and vaccination, the mortality over 2 years among different countries remained the same. Western countries were 10 to 20 times higher mortality from COVID per million compared to the Asian, 10 times more compared to the Asian, 20 times, 15, 20 times more compared to the African countries, whereas African had the least vaccination. Then future strategy, we have to think of this. We have to review mass vaccination because in this pandemic, it did not